You want to do some drum programming that actually sounds good? I know what steps you are messing up. I know which steps you are forgetting. And I'm going to give you a really nice walkthrough so you can get this kind of sound. I'm from Mexico City and my name is Juanchis. So we're going to go from this to this. I'm going to use the solo in front feature within Reaper. That, remember, you can look it up in the actions list and you can adjust the solo front dim that I have it set up to minus 18 dBs. And that way we can always listen to the bass in the back. But it's not fighting with the drums themselves. So I only made a 2-bar loop. That's how most people usually do drums, right? They do a 2-bar loop and they program some sort of straight note, eighth note, straight rhythm that's all on the grid. And even though we can use the grid quantizing or the grid swing, and you can add some swing to the grid so your MIDI moves also. This is not the actual feeling. You might want to try and record it, and since you're playing it real time, you might end up editing and quantizing it a bit using the quantize menu in the piano roll and quantizing the events. And that gives you this really straight, robotic kind of execution. So one of the things that I want to make clear is that in most scenarios, if the MIDI event lasts longer or less than an eighth note or a quarter note or whatever, it shouldn't really affect on drums. Holds the sound across a longer period of time. It's not the same thing if you're playing a pad or a keyboard or a solo instrument that you need the note to hold on for a longer time, right? Drums or in drum programming usually is just one single hit in one single moment, unless the plugin itself has some interaction across time and holds the note in some way. Some people for drum programming usually use this default mode for drum mode. Remember that you can look in the action list and look for view, show events as diamonds, as rectangles, as triangles. And you have different ways of looking into this. You can also set up a cycle action so you can cycle across the states of this, but I have it up here, right? So whatever you find easier to see, use that. So the problem here is first that everything is really on the grid, and it's absolutely flat because maybe I'm just double hitting and placing one note somewhere and writing notes everywhere. And everything will be with the exact same velocity. That means that velocity is the one thing that we use as MIDI to let the instrument know how hard should it hit or how loud should the instrument be. If you go down here, you can change so many information. I have to make special videos on this, and I will make some Ableton Live translated techniques into Reaper, and we will be using a lot of this CC information. But for now, we will only be using the velocity modification, and you have these small bars up here. And for example, I can change the accent, and I can actually accent the first kick and maybe accent this snare right here on the 2. I will go back and I will get these 2 snares a lot lower so you can listen to the difference. And that starts feeling better because we are actually programming drums. This also applies to electronic music. Of course, you have to accent your hi-hats because that has to do a lot with groove. Remember, please, that groove is not only time-based, it's also level-based. So on the second version of this, I have a velocity variation where I'm actually accenting these variations. If you want to see how I did that, remember that whenever you're looking at your piano, your MIDI roll section, up here you have all of the tracks in your session and you can just change from one to another, right? You can solo, mute, look, lock, and do any other actions that you might need up here. It's really great for navigating your session all across. So this time we're looking into the velocity changing. I was meant to be down here into the velocity changing. So we have the proper accents. Listen to this. So one of the things that I might suggest when you're trying to write a drum part is to really concentrate on the most important things that actually make the groove. So I'm going to mute some notes so we actually get the most essential part of the groove. For example, this kick drum, I will make a whole video on how to write drums. I was so inspired by, I will link it in the description, by 8-Bit Theory video on how to write drum for non-drummers. And I have kept on developing that idea and talking to drummers and learning on my own. But the whole idea is to have the most central idea of what the drum pattern is. So I need one kick, one snare that helps the backbeat feel. I don't necessarily need these feels, and maybe I have enough with this. I could probably live without this and without this. And if I play the pattern, I could probably even live without this one as well. I have a lot of space down here that some other instrument might fill, but I could also fill it up with this other kick, snare, kick up here, and that's the essence of the pattern. That means that my accents should be especially in these 4 times that I actually realized that are really important. That's the 1, the 2, the and of the 3, and the 4. Right? Those are my most important timings. So I'm going to select all of those. And by holding Option on my keyboard, remember Option on PC is Alt, I will just increase the velocity of those hits. And of anything that might be in those timings. And I will listen to it again. And I'm going to take advantage also of another feature built in Reaper, where down here I can change the color regarding the track, but I will change them to the velocity. So you have a visual reference of what's higher in intensity. The higher I get to the red, I will get higher in velocity. And my lowest note could be blue. Right? So I have a whole spectrum around it. So first, find the actual accents that are really important, highlight them, and the rest of the MIDI events, leave them a little bit lower. Put attention to the accents. And for this third version, or for this third update, what I will do is not only really tweak that curve of velocities, that I want some variety because some hits might be helping me get to a stronger hit, so I need some crescendo, some tuta, that kind of feeling. And in this third option, I will not work in the piano roll. I'm going to take advantage of a JS MIDI effect that I haven't seen too many people in the Reaper community talk about the MIDI effects. Since I'm an Ableton Live hardcore user, I really take advantage of those things. So this thing, what does, I have my own default version, you can just copy it and set it up as your own default, is it will give me a minimum note available of any MIDI event that goes through. It will come out as low as a 61 value, that's any level, that's half level, and my highest note will come at 127 velocity. You can put this completely random or with a full range all the way from 0, but most of the times this is all I need because in drums I probably never need something to go as low as that. Next, I will set up the bass velocity. That everything, instead of being from 100, I can make it a little bit lower so I can add some variation. Variation will make that if the note coming in is 100, it will have some variation percentage-wise in this range. So if this is 60, let's keep these numbers as tight and as easy to remind as possible. So you have 60 numbers, it will have a 14% between these 60 values to come out as some other value. The interesting thing is that it's going to change it relative to the accent that you already did, and it's not going to modify it much more. I'm going to try and build a MIDI JS plugin that does exactly what I do on Ableton Live, and I will release it free for everyone. It shouldn't be too hard to code, like I just have to look into it, but I think I can make it. And you can even change the accents as well. So this is something that I just add, and it adds some extra flow to it. I'm going to play it once without it, and then I'm going to play it twice with it. Well, one and one. Without it. With it. Without it. With it for a last time. That sounds really different, right? So remember that you can just goof around with this. You can maybe take it to the max. You can change the variation really high and listen to something crazy happen. You can use that creatively for some percussion adding, for some not so straight hi-hat, like that's so tiring and that's so unreal. There's another MIDI JS that I found in Reaper that I don't think it really does what I want to do, but feel free to try it out. It also has this timing humanizer, millisecond wise. I wouldn't go beyond 8 milliseconds, maybe 9. 10 could probably be a lot. So yeah, have fun with this one, and it can probably give you some randomness that you might want. If you want to check everything that's coming out of those JS plugins, remember that you can use the real control MIDI and show the log, so you can actually see if it's coming out using one single note and see if it's coming out what you're expecting it to output. The third version of it is, we have to go back here. I'm going to add some ghost notes. This means that, as you can see here, I will add some low energy hits to the snare drum. For example, as you can see, this has a lot more hits than this, right? This has a lot less hits and this has a lot more hits, especially on the snare drum, right? The field is already fixed a little bit as well. I wouldn't worry too much about it, but this is probably like, if you want to program something more in the style of Nate Smith, you might want to do some really more playing around with the hi-hat, and you can add some extra hits with your left hand on the snare. And listen to this. That sounds a lot better because I'm actually taking advantage of that feeling. For this style, this works. For some other styles, it doesn't work as much, but try to explore this dynamic execution of a live drummer, right? For the next level, we're going to adjust the timing just enough, right? I'm going to use this version, the triangles, because it's going to be easier on the eyes. So if I go to the adding ghost notes step, you will see that everything is still on the grid, but it's already feeling a lot better. If I go into the timing version of it, sometimes I'm rushing a little bit with the snare, and sometimes I'm falling, almost feeling like it's falling, and sometimes I'm rushing with these ghost notes. Listen to this. That feels a lot better. So play around a little bit with the timing. Try to maybe remember that something has to anchor you to the real timing. And it's not a metronome. Like something really anchors you. Maybe you're following a really steady kick drum and you're playing around with the snare. Or maybe you're anchoring to the kick and the snare and you're playing around with the timing of the hi-hats. But you need to have an actual tempo pulse that's steady. Otherwise, if you try to fluctuate the three things at the same time, unless you're a drummer, it's not going to work out. So try practicing like that. For the next level, we will adjust the fills, right? So I'm going to go back here and I'm going to show you a way that I usually do this as well on Ableton Live. So here we have the free item positioning action that's available on track and free item positioning, right? So this allows me to move around within the same track, different media items that could be audio or MIDI. And I have a couple of fields that I usually use for whatever thing. And what I'm doing is I'm only cutting the clip right here. And from here I'm muting and choosing different fields for different parts of the loop itself. So let me show you how this actually brings some development for the actual rhythm. You can program anything there like tom fields, cymbals, whatever you want, and you can have them separate within the same track. That's also useful. I could turn this one on and maybe just use this one because it's between the whole section, mute this one, up this one. And of course I can adjust it, go in and whatever, right? But you get the idea. Try to add a couple of fields that might come at the end of an 8-bar loop or a 4-bar loop, but I'm already extending my phrases and my whole section within the whole shape of the song or the track or whatever I'm working in. If you want to know how I'm zooming in and out like that, like just hitting something and hit Z and zoom in and X, zoom out, I'm using a couple of actions that you can look in my series of look what I found in Reaper and how to make it better. So I'm using actions like zoom to media item and restore previous zoom level and a couple of other actions. So I linked that video in the description, so be sure to check it out. And if you're liking this video, I'd really appreciate it if you're subscribing. I really like the love that I've been feeling since I started this channel by all of the Reaper community. This is a really interesting way to start making your drums sound a lot better. Not only that, maybe you are sending all of this only as a MIDI send towards a plugin, and when you're trying to print everything, it's kind of a headache. So I have a whole video on how to record your videos inside of the session. You can take advantage of some plugins that actually have multi-output. In the case of Soulful Drums by Ubisoft, you can just select the multi-out, and now I have 16 stereo outs where I can record the ambience, the room, the spot mics, and whatever. And you just make another couple of tracks, you do the sends, the proper routing, but look at that video. This video is not for that. And you can save that as a track template. Remember that you just select a whole group of tracks, right click, and save as track template, and you can load it already routed whenever you need it. Okay, so and the last thing for this video that could be really useful for you is that maybe you have that MIDI pattern really set up, and there's an action that you can use also built in Reaper. I will leave this action as usual in the description of the video. Explode MIDI note rows, pitch to new items. Since every single drum hit is one single pitch, it will explode it and give you a whole separation of that. So whenever I run this action, what will happen is it will drop them as some children tracks, and I can just recolor them so we actually see the notes. And I have all of my drum patterns split, and maybe you can use the send MIDI and just copy the send and paste it to the other tracks as always using the actions, and then just render it out if you need it separately. If you don't need it separately, like this is an action that you can save yourself from doing, but remember that you can actually do this. The last bit for those that actually stayed for the whole video is really special. So some drum programming plugins have so many sounds built in, right? In this plugin, I have like 6 octaves full of sounds. That's a lot. If I really start looking into every single hit, I will eventually find out that I have some snare rolls available instead of having to program them. I will have some different kick drum intensities or sounds that I can use as anticipating kick drums. I have different articulations of the hi-hat, so it's not just closed and open hi-hat. I can also use the pedal. I can use maybe, so I can do like and mute it with my hand. So really explore how many things does your plugin let you say. If you're working with something really basic and you're doing this just for fun, it's fine. I don't care. Have fun with it. That's the only purpose. If you're trying to set up a business where people will call you because you're making some amazing drum sounds and you're making some fantastic demos in no time, try to invest some time in something like this. Okay, if you like this kind of videos, be sure to comment, like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell because I'm releasing a video every week. There are more videos coming on the H3000 update by Eventide. That's fantastic. I have videos on search. I have a lot of videos on Reaper actions, editing, and a lot of Reaper specialized content, and some others for listening skills, where I show you how to listen for overheads and stereo separation. I also have a couple of plugins, like third-party plugins that I show, but try to take the most interesting things out of those videos if you're not trying to buy the plugin, and try to apply those ideas without spending one single dollar or peso in my case. Straight from Mexico City, my name is Juanchis, and thanks for listening.